The Caribbean sun shimmered like molten gold over the water as the majestic star departed from Miami port. Daniel Taylor leaned on the balcony rail, sunglasses hiding the exhaustion behind his eyes. To anyone watching, he looked like a man at peace, a husband enjoying a long-awaited vacation. But inside he felt hollow. Marissa stood beside him, snapping photos of the horizon. Her laughter sounded rehearsed, the kind that fills silence but doesn't come from the heart. Daniel glanced at her, studying every movement. The way she brushed her hair back, the quick flashes of her phone screen when she thought he wasn't looking. They had booked this cruise as a fresh start. After 12 years of marriage and too many quiet arguments, the idea of the sea felt like a reset button. 7 nights between endless waves. No work, no friends, no distractions. Just them. Feels good to be away, doesn't it? Marissa said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. Daniel forced a smile. Yeah, feels quiet. She turned to face him. That's the point. We needed quiet. The word lingered between them like a challenge. Quiet had always been their problem. Too much of it. At dinner, the couple sat among other honeymooners and retirees, their table decorated with roses and polished wine glasses. The ship's dining hall sparkled under chandeliers, but the glow couldn't reach Daniel's thoughts. He watched her talk animatedly to the waiter, her smile bright, her tone light. He wondered when she'd last looked at him that way. Narration carried the weight of memory. Flashbacks of their early days filled his mind. Late-night pizza runs, the way she'd fall asleep on his shoulder during movies, how she used to say he was her safe place. Somewhere between promotions, long hours, and silent dinners, that safety had vanished. As the band began to play soft jazz, Marissa reached for her wine glass. To us, she said. Daniel clinked his glass gently. To us. The champagne fizzed like a lie breaking the surface. Later, on the upper deck, he stood alone while the ocean wind whipped around him. The sea stretched endlessly, dark and unknowable. Somewhere far below, the waves hissed against the hull, an endless whisper that sounded almost like a warning. He watched Marissa through the glass doors of the lounge as she danced with other passengers, her dress flowing like smoke under the colored lights. She looked alive again, something she hadn't looked in months, and that thought cut deeper than he expected. A ship's horn echoed in the distance. Daniel's reflection stared back at him in the glass. A man trying to fix something already cracked. He turned away, whispering to himself, "We'll make this work. We have to." Behind him, Marissa's laughter rose above the music. Clear, distant, untouched by guilt. The moonlight glimmered over the waves, as if the ocean itself knew that by the end of this voyage, one of them wouldn't return. The cruise ship slept under a velvet sky. The last of the laughter from the lounge had faded, leaving only the low hum of engines and the rhythmic pulse of the sea against steel. Daniel lay in bed beside Marissa, watching the reflection of the moon ripple across the ceiling. Her breathing was steady, slow, the kind of peaceful rhythm he hadn't heard in years. He should have been asleep too, but something in him stayed awake, restless. The silence between them no longer felt like peace, felt like distance. A faint glow broke the darkness. Marissa's phone, lying face down on the nightstand, buzzed once, then again. Daniel's eyes flicked toward it. The blue light pulsed against her sleeping face, soft and cruel at the same time. He hesitated. Don't look. Trust her. But trust had been a fragile thing lately, brittle as glass. He reached for the phone. The lock screen came alive, a single message preview flashing before it dimmed again. "I miss you too." His hand froze. The words burned themselves into his mind. The glow faded, but the damage was already done. He stared at her, at the woman sleeping inches away, and felt something crack inside him. Her phone buzzed again. This time he picked it up completely. His thumb hovered above the screen. For a second, he almost set it back down. But then he remembered the way she'd smiled at the waiter, the way she danced with strangers while he watched from the shadows. He unlocked it. The messages scrolled endlessly, small, digital confessions of intimacy. "I dream about you. Wish you were here instead of him." Next week, everything changes. Every word felt like a blade carving into his chest. Ethan, he whispered the name aloud, barely recognizing his own voice. Marissa stirred. Daniel froze, pretending to sleep as she shifted slightly, sighed, then went still again. He lay there for hours, wide-eyed, every heartbeat echoing like a drum. Narration carried the storm in his mind, the memories twisting now through a new, sinister lens. The times she came home late, the sudden, unexplained trips to see her sister, the perfume he didn't recognize, the ocean whispered outside, dark and endless. It was as if the waves were mocking him, repeating the words over and over. I miss you too. When dawn began to leak through the curtains, Daniel was still awake. Marissa turned toward him, smiling sleepily. Did you sleep? She asked softly. He studied her face, the familiar softness of her eyes, the curve of her lips. Everything looked the same, yet felt like a lie. Yeah, he lied back. Like a baby. She kissed his cheek and slipped out of bed to shower. The sound of running water filled the room. Daniel stared at the phone in his hand, thumb resting on the screen one last time before he locked it and placed it back where it had been. Outside, the sea glittered like nothing had changed, but something had shifted forever. As he watched her step out of the bathroom, humming softly, Daniel made a silent promise. He would find Ethan, whoever he was. The morning sun poured through the cabin curtains, turning the room gold. Marissa hummed softly as she brushed her hair, scrolling her phone with a small, private smile. Daniel watched her from the bed, pretending to read. Every vibration of that device felt like a secret heartbeat between her and someone else. By breakfast, he had decided he wouldn't confront her yet. He would watch. The cruise ship felt different now. Yesterday it had been paradise. Today it was a stage. Every laugh, every glance, every stranger looked suspicious. He followed a few steps behind as Marissa strolled along the upper deck, stopping to take pictures of the endless blue. Her dress fluttered in the sea breeze, sunlight dancing across her shoulders. That was when Daniel saw him. A man, tall, tanned, mid-30s, wearing a linen shirt and dark sunglasses, leaning casually against the railing near the pool bar. The stranger's gaze lingered on Marissa just a little too long before shifting away. Marissa looked up briefly, meeting his eyes, and something electric passed between them. Subtle, but real. Daniel's stomach turned. He pretended to adjust his sunglasses, his jaw tightening as he watched them both. The man smiled faintly, lifted his drink, and walked away. Marissa turned to Daniel, pretending not to notice anything unusual. You look tense, she said lightly. Just tired, he replied. Didn't sleep much. She slipped her arm around his. Then maybe you should rest. But rest was impossible now. Hours later, Daniel sat alone in the lounge, nursing a whiskey he didn't want. He watched the crowd. Tourists, couples, laughter blending with piano music. The stranger appeared again, sitting at a nearby table, speaking quietly with a crew member. Daniel caught fragments. Late dinner, same table. Don't mention. Every word added fuel to the fire burning in his chest. He followed when the man left, careful not to be noticed. Down the corridor, past the spa, toward the sun deck. Marissa stood there, her back turned. The stranger paused at a distance, glanced around, and continued walking, right past her, leaving a folded napkin on a table near the railing. Marissa picked it up casually a moment later, pretending to fix her hair. She slipped it into her purse without hesitation. Daniel's vision tunneled. He wanted to confront her, to scream, to demand answers, but he didn't. Not yet. He turned away, walking back toward their cabin, his breath heavy, pulse hammering in his ears. The ocean outside was deceptively calm, blue and endless, as if mocking the chaos growing inside him. That night, when Marissa said she wanted to grab a drink with new friends, Daniel forced a smile and told her to go ahead. The door closed behind her. Silence filled the room. He paced for an hour before giving in to curiosity. Leaving the cabin, He followed the faint sound of music to the lounge below deck. Through the glass wall, he spotted her sitting alone at a corner table, checking her phone repeatedly. Waiting. The stranger appeared moments later, approaching her with that same confident calm. They didn't touch, didn't speak openly, but their silence said enough. Daniel turned away before they could notice him. His reflection in the glass looked hollow, wild, unrecognizable. The sea outside roared faintly, crashing against the hull like distant thunder. Back in his cabin, he poured himself another drink and stared out into the night. The ocean stretched endlessly, black and hungry. Tomorrow, he decided, he would confront her. He needed the truth, no matter how much it destroyed him. The sky was ink black, scattered with cold, distant stars. A soft wind brushed the deck as the cruise ship drifted through a vast emptiness. Daniel leaned against the railing, gripping the cool metal until his knuckles whitened. His mind was a storm. The napkin, the glances, the late-night whispers replaying in an endless loop. He had promised himself he'd wait until morning. But as the ship's lights dimmed and the world fell silent, he couldn't wait any longer. He needed to know. Marissa appeared from the stairwell, her hair tousled by the sea breeze, a faint trace of perfume trailing behind her. She jumped slightly when she saw him waiting. "Daniel," she said, startled. "You scared me. What are you doing out here?" "Couldn't sleep." His voice was steady, too steady. "Where were you?" She hesitated only a moment. "Just having a drink. With people I met earlier." "You went to bed early." Daniel took a slow step toward her. "People?" His tone was soft, but there was venom beneath it. "Or one person in particular?" Her expression faltered. "What are you talking about?" He exhaled, eyes dark. "Don't lie, Marissa. I saw you. I saw him." For a long moment, the only sound was the ocean. The ship rocked gently, as if the sea itself were holding its breath. Marissa's shoulders slumped. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. She just looked tired. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "Then how was it supposed to be?" Daniel's voice broke, anger cutting through his restraint. "You sneaking around while I sit here pretending everything's fine? I didn't mean to hurt you." Her words trembled. "It wasn't physical, not at first. I was lonely, Daniel. You stopped seeing me. You were always working, always somewhere else." He listened. Daniel laughed bitterly. "So that's what I was missing?" Listening. He stepped closer, face inches from hers. "You could have talked to me instead of crawling into someone else's messages." Tears shimmered in her eyes, reflecting the deck lights. "I didn't plan this. I swear. It just happened. His name is Ethan. He made me feel alive again." "Alive?" Daniel's voice hardened. "You call this living? Lying to me every day." Marissa covered her face, shaking. "I thought if I ended it, things would go back to normal. That's why I agreed to this trip. I wanted to fix us." The confession hung in the air, heavy and fragile. For a moment, Daniel said nothing. The fury drained from his expression, replaced by something colder, resignation. He looked out at the sea, endless and dark. "You could have told me," he said quietly. "I would have forgiven you." Marissa lowered her hands. "Would you have?" He turned toward her, eyes wet but unblinking. "I don't know anymore." The night stretched between them, vast as the water below. Two people standing inches apart yet already worlds away. Finally, Marissa stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "Please, Daniel, let's just move past this. Let's go home and start over." He didn't pull away, but his silence said everything. The ocean wind rose, carrying the faint sound of laughter from another deck. Life continuing elsewhere, far from their unraveling world. Marissa turned, walking toward the stairs, leaving Daniel alone beneath the stars. He stayed there long after she disappeared from view, staring into the black water below. Somewhere out there, waves broke against the hull, calm, constant, merciless. He didn't know it yet, but what she confessed tonight was only half the truth. And by the time he learned the rest, it would already be too late. The next morning dawned gray, the ocean restless under heavy clouds. Daniel stood at the balcony railing, coffee untouched in his hand. Sleep had never come. Marissa's confession kept looping in his head. Her words, her tears, her insistence that it had been emotional, not physical. But lies have layers, and Daniel was sure she'd only peeled back the first one. Marissa remained silent through breakfast, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses. She picked at her food, said she felt seasick, and excused herself early. Daniel watched her leave without a word. The moment she disappeared from sight, he stood up and headed toward the ship's reception desk. "Excuse me," he said to the young attendant behind the counter, forcing calm into his voice. "Could you tell me if a passenger named Ethan Cole is on board?" The attendant typed, her fingers clacking across the keyboard. After a moment, she looked up. "I'm sorry, sir. No passenger by that name." Daniel frowned. "Could you check again? Maybe he boarded under another cabin number." She shook her head politely. "No one with that name is registered." He thanked her, though his pulse was hammering. Either Marissa had lied about who he was, or Ethan wasn't who he said he was at all. Narration deepened the tension, the idea of a ghost lover haunting the ship. Everywhere Daniel looked, he saw possibilities. A man reading by the pool, a couple whispering near the bar, the tall stranger in the linen shirt from before. Any one of them could be him. By midday, Daniel's calm had fractured. He bribed a bartender for information, sliding a folded $100 across the counter. The man hesitated, then nodded toward the lower deck. "You didn't hear it from me, but a guy matching your description was seen there, room 23B. Doesn't talk to anyone. Keeps to himself." Daniel's stomach twisted as he made his way through the narrow corridor below deck. The hum of machinery filled the air, mixing with the faint metallic scent of seawater. He stopped in front of the door marked 23B and knocked. No answer. He tried again, louder. Still nothing. Finally, he gripped the handle. Locked. But through the thin door, he caught the faintest trace of cologne. The same scent that lingered on Marissa's dress the night before. "Ethan!" he hissed, pounding the door once more. "Open up." A crew member appeared at the end of the hall. "Sir, is there a problem?" Daniel forced a strained smile. "No, just looking for a friend." The crewman gave him a cautious look before walking away. Back in his cabin, Marissa was gone. Only her phone charger lay coiled on the desk like a snake. Daniel's anger turned to panic. He stormed out again, searching every deck, the bar, the spa, the lounge. Nothing. Hours passed before he finally spotted her at the far end of the promenade, leaning against the railing, staring at the horizon. Relief flooded him, and fury followed close behind. "Where were you?" he demanded. She turned, startled. "Daniel, you're scaring me. I asked where you were. I just needed air." Her voice trembled. "I told you Ethan's gone. It's over." "Gone where?" "I don't know," she snapped, her eyes flashing. "He said he had to leave, that it was complicated. I don't even think his real name is Ethan." The words hit Daniel like ice. He stared at her for a long moment, realizing she wasn't lying. She was afraid. Above them, thunder rolled in the distance, the first sound of an approaching storm. Daniel turned toward the horizon, watching dark clouds swell. Whatever truth waited ahead, it wasn't finished with them yet. The storm arrived without warning. By nightfall, the sky had turned black and the wind howled across the decks like a living thing. Rain hammered the glass of the observation lounge where Daniel sat alone, nursing his fourth drink. The sea outside heaved and twisted, dark waves breaking against the hull. It felt like the world was unraveling, outside and inside him. Marissa had retreated to their cabin hours ago after another tense argument. She wanted to forget, to start over. But Daniel couldn't. Every word she spoke sounded like an excuse. Every silence, a lie. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating his reflection in the glass. Eyes sunken, jaw clenched, a man he barely recognized. "Who are you becoming?" A voice in his head whispered. He closed his eyes, gripping the glass so tightly it nearly cracked. Images replayed. Marissa laughing with that man, the folded napkin, the perfume that wasn't hers. He'd been trying to hold himself together, but the betrayal pulsed in his veins like poison. A sudden crash of thunder shook the room. Daniel flinched. The storm outside had turned savage. Waves slamming against the ship's side, the floor trembling beneath his feet. Crew members hurried past, securing doors and shouting orders. He stepped out into the corridor, rain instantly lashing against his face through an open hatch. The hallway lights flickered as the wind howled through the narrow space. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stay still. His thoughts were spinning, each one darker than the last. He found himself standing outside their cabin door. The light inside glowed faintly beneath the frame. He entered quietly. Marissa was sitting on the bed, her face pale, a half-packed suitcase open beside her. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice low. She startled, then straightened. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel. You're scaring me." "Scaring you?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm the one being lied to, humiliated, and you're afraid? You're not yourself," she whispered. "You're drinking, following me, asking crew members about strangers. You need help." He took a slow step forward. "I need answers." Tears welled in her eyes. "I told you everything I know. He's gone. Please, let it go." For a heartbeat, Daniel almost believed her. Then he noticed something. A folded note sitting on the dresser beside her phone. "What's that?" She froze. "Nothing. It's—" He snatched it up before she could stop him. The paper was damp from her hands. The handwriting hurried. "Meet me below deck. 11:45. One last time." Daniel's blood turned cold. "Still nothing?" he whispered. Marissa's lips trembled. "It's not what you think." He slammed his hand against the wall. "Then what is it, Marissa?" "Another lie." Her voice broke. "Please, I just wanted closure." He stared at her, chest heaving. Outside, thunder cracked like a warning. For a moment, the fury drained out of him, replaced by something heavier. Despair. "You really loved him, didn't you?" he said quietly. Marissa looked down. "I don't know what I felt anymore." The ship lurched violently, sending both of them stumbling. An alarm blared somewhere above. Daniel steadied himself on the wall, watching as she clutched the suitcase, her eyes wide with fear. Not of the storm, but of him. He turned away, walking toward the door. "I'm going to find him," he said softly. "And then we'll see who's really lying." He stepped into the corridor, the door slamming shut behind him as thunder rolled overhead. The storm outside raged harder, but the one inside Daniel was only just beginning. The corridors below deck smelled of salt, rust, and something faintly chemical, like a place the ship had forgotten. The sounds of the storm above were muffled here, replaced by the low hum of machinery and the steady drip of water leaking through the pipes. Daniel's footsteps echoed against the metal floor. His clothes were soaked from the rain, his heart beat loud in his ears. In his hand, he still held the damp note. "Meet me below deck. 11:45. It was 11:42. The deeper he went, the fewer people he saw. Crew-only zones loomed ahead, their warning signs half hidden in the flickering light. He pushed on anyway, his mind replaying Marissa's trembling words. Closure. What kind of closure required a secret meeting below deck during a storm? He rounded a corner and froze. A figure stood at the end of the passage, half in shadow. A man, tall, wearing a dark rain jacket, the same build as the stranger he'd seen on the deck that night. "Hey!" Daniel shouted, stepping forward. The man turned, startled. His face was partially hidden by the hood, but Daniel saw the glint of recognition and fear. "Wait!" Daniel yelled again, breaking into a run. The man bolted, disappearing through a maintenance door. Daniel chased after him, the metal floor slick beneath his shoes. They weaved through narrow hallways, down a flight of stairs, until the stranger slipped into a dimly lit storage bay. When Daniel burst in, the man was gone. Only silence, and the rhythmic thrum of the ship's engines. Then he saw it, a small duffel bag resting on a crate. He unzipped it, Inside were a phone, a passport, and a stack of photographs. He froze. Marissa, laughing on a beach. Marissa, sitting in a cafe with the same man. Marissa, kissing him. His stomach twisted. The betrayal felt complete now, solid and undeniable. The man wasn't some passing stranger. He was someone she had loved deeply enough to risk everything for. A noise behind him made him spin. Daniel! Marissa stood in the doorway, soaked and breathless, her hair plastered to her face. How did you? He began, but she cut him off. I followed you. I knew you'd find this. You knew. His voice broke. So it's true then. Everything. Tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. It ended before the cruise. I didn't want to hurt you anymore. I just needed to tell him it was over. Below deck? At midnight? During a storm? He laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe that? Please, Daniel, just listen. But before she could finish, a sharp noise cracked through the room. A metallic clang, like a door slamming shut. Both turned toward the sound, but the hallway beyond was empty. The man was still nearby, watching, waiting. Daniel stepped forward, fury flashing across his face. Stay here, he ordered. Daniel, no. Marissa's voice echoed down the corridor, but he was already gone, chasing shadows into the maze of pipes and corridors below. The storm outside roared louder, as if mirroring the chaos inside the ship. And somewhere beneath the decks, unseen by either of them, a security camera light blinked red. Recording. The storm finally calmed by morning, leaving behind a strange stillness, the kind that comes after something has already broken. The sea outside glimmered in silver sheets beneath a clouded sky. From the deck, the horizon looked endless, yet suffocating. Daniel hadn't slept. He spent the night pacing their cabin, the duffel bag lying open on the floor like a wound. Every photograph, every trace of the man Marissa had loved, burned into his mind. By sunrise, exhaustion had numbed his anger into something colder. Resolve. At noon, the captain announced a formal dinner to lift spirits after the storm. Passengers welcomed the distraction. Laughter and piano music soon filled the dining hall. But at table 17, the silence between Daniel and Marissa was deafening. She wore a dark blue dress, her eyes hollow, her smile forced. Across from her, Daniel's expression was unreadable. His fork moved mechanically, his gaze never leaving her face. You haven't said a word, she finally whispered. There's nothing left to say, he replied, voice flat. Then why are we here? He looked around the crowded room. The waiters gliding between tables, couples toasting, the violinist playing something soft and tragic. Because appearances matter, don't they? Her breath caught. You think I care about appearances? He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. You cared enough to lie, enough to sneak away while I slept. Her eyes darted around, panicked. Not here, Daniel, please. Oh, don't worry, he said quietly. I wouldn't want to ruin the captain's dinner. Their conversation died as a waiter approached, setting down 2 glasses of champagne. Compliments of the house, the man said, smiling politely before walking away. Marissa hesitated before touching hers. Daniel raised his glass but didn't drink. I loved you, she whispered, barely audible over the music. He stared at her, eyes dark. Past tense. No, she said, her voice trembling. I still do. I made mistakes. You have to believe that. Lightning flickered outside the panoramic windows. Faint, distant, but enough to cast their faces in momentary flashes of white. Do you believe in second chances? She asked. He took a slow sip of his drink. Not on this ocean. Her hand shook as she set the glass down. Daniel, please. I'm scared of what you might do. Then you know me better than I thought. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The ship's engines thrummed below, steady and calm, like a heartbeat before a rest. When dessert arrived, Daniel reached across the table, gently covering her hand with his. To any onlooker, it looked tender, reconciliation. But his grip was too firm, his smile too measured. After dinner, he said softly. Let's go up to the deck. Just us. No distractions. Her eyes searched his, desperate for warmth but finding only distance. All right? She whispered. As the violins swelled and laughter filled the room, Daniel lifted his glass once more, forcing a smile. To honesty, he said. She hesitated, then clinked hers against his. The faint chime echoed like a countdown. Outside, the waves shimmered under a rising moon, calm, quiet, and waiting. The deck was slick with the storm's aftermath, moonlight shimmering off puddles that reflected Daniel's tense face. Marissa followed behind him silently, clutching her shawl around her shoulders, eyes wide with unease. The chill of the night air made her shiver, but it wasn't the cold. It was the weight of knowing she had nowhere to hide. Daniel's steps were measured, almost calm, but each one carried a tension that pressed against the silence like a drumbeat. He led her to the far end of the observation deck, where the railing curved outward over the dark water. Below, the ocean moved quietly, deceptively serene, hiding currents that could swallow a person whole. Daniel, I don't, she began, her voice trembling. He cut her off with a soft, chilling whisper. Just tell me the truth. One last time. I did, she said, shaking. I ended it. I swear. Everything with him is over. I just wanted to fix us. Daniel's eyes narrowed. And yet, there's still a part of you here, still with him. She stepped back instinctively, sensing the cold undercurrent in his voice. I am here with you, Daniel. You have to believe me. The moon reflected off his face, sharp angles softened by shadows. For a moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice low, deliberate. Do you know what it feels like to watch someone you love give pieces of herself away? Again and again? She began, but words failed her. Daniel's hand brushed against the railing. He took a deep breath, the sea wind whipping at his hair. The water below seemed to shimmer with movement, black shapes gliding beneath the surface. Sharks, perhaps. He had no idea, but it didn't matter. The ocean was hungry, just like the rage that had been growing inside him for days. Daniel, please, Marissa begged, taking a tentative step toward him. You don't have to do this. We can talk. Her words were cut off as he moved closer, his hand brushing hers almost by accident. She froze, and in that heartbeat, he saw her face, lit by moonlight. A mixture of fear and love, regret and desperation. Goodbye, Marissa, he whispered. She gasped. Daniel, what? The next second, the world tilted. A scream tore from her throat as he pushed. The railing slipped from her hands. She fell backward into the cold, waiting darkness. Daniel froze, the taste of salt and fear filling his senses. The splash was muffled by distance, but he imagined it in vivid detail, her hair floating in black water, her limbs thrashing, the silver moon reflecting off waves disturbed by her sudden absence. He stepped to the railing, staring down. The ocean seemed to swallow her instantly, leaving only ripples. The faint flash of dorsal fins caught his eye. Predators or just imagination? It didn't matter. The deed was done. The wind whipped around him, carrying her scream across the deck in his mind. He felt neither triumph nor relief, only a hollow emptiness that settled like ash in his chest. For a long time he stood there unmoving, listening to the waves lapping against the hull. The storm had passed, but the storm inside him raged unchecked. Finally, he turned away from the railing, walking back toward the cabin as though nothing had happened. But he knew it wasn't over. Someone would notice. Someone would question. And soon the consequences would find him. By morning, the ship had slowed, the water calm but heavy with tension. Passengers whispered in hushed tones, the once cheerful crews now shadowed by fear. Daniel stood on the upper deck, leaning against the railing, hands trembling slightly. He told himself it was exhaustion, the storm, the adrenaline, but deep down he knew the truth. The ship's intercom crackled. Attention all passengers. A missing person report has been filed. Authorities have been notified. Daniel's chest tightened. The words sounded impossibly calm, as if announcing tea rather than disaster. Around him, crew members moved quickly, checking cabins and questioning guests. The elegance of the cruise had vanished, replaced by antiseptic urgency. Detective Alvarez arrived soon after docking, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She approached Daniel cautiously, her notebook in hand. "Mr. Taylor?" she asked. "I understand you were the last to see your wife?" Daniel nodded, forcing a neutral expression. "Yes, I went to the deck. She said she needed air." Alvarez scribbled in her notebook. "Did you notice anyone else on deck? Any suspicious persons?" "Just passengers," he said, keeping his tone casual. "It was early. Not many people." Narration carried his internal storm. Every question, every pen stroke against paper, tightened the cage around him. He had rehearsed this. He would stay calm, detached, avoid suspicion. But already cracks formed in his mind. "Where exactly did you last see her?" Alvarez pressed. "By the railing," he said, gesturing vaguely. "She slipped out to the far end. I didn't follow closely." Her eyes narrowed. "And did anyone see you two together?" Daniel hesitated, forcing a small shrug. "I don't think so. We weren't in view of the main deck." Alvarez nodded and moved to interview crew members, leaving Daniel standing alone. The hum of the engines and the distant gulls outside made his thoughts drift. The duffel bag, the note, the photographs. None of that is in evidence. Yet, hours passed. Photographs were confiscated from Marissa's cabin, and the crew recounted her last known movements. Surveillance cameras had captured fragments. Marissa leaving her room, Daniel following, but the final moments on the upper deck remained unclear. Daniel watched the detectives methodically piece together the story. Every replayed clip, every report felt like a spotlight on him, though no one suspected yet. He told himself, "Patience. Stay calm. They can't prove anything." A crew member approached him quietly. "Sir, there's a security recording from below deck that seems unusual." Daniel's stomach clenched. "Unusual how?" The man shook his head. "I don't know. But Detective Alvarez is reviewing it now." The word reviewing echoed in Daniel's mind. Soon, she'll see everything. As the sun began to sink, casting long shadows across the deck, Daniel felt the first real weight of fear. Not the fear of the storm, not the fear of Marissa's betrayal, but the fear that truth, even hidden beneath lies, always surfaces. Alvarez returned, her expression unreadable. She closed her notebook, giving him a measured glance. "We're beginning to understand what happened," she said. "And Mr. Taylor, you're going to need to tell us everything." Daniel nodded, a cold knot forming in his stomach. He had survived suspicion, tension, and secrecy, but he hadn't survived the inevitability of consequence. Outside, the ocean stretched wide, calm and endless, reflecting the last light of day. Yet beneath its surface, secrets swirled, and Daniel knew that by morning, nothing would remain hidden. The investigation had begun the moment the authorities were alerted. Daniel, composed and seemingly devastated, had been questioned repeatedly, each time more intensely than the last. The ship's security footage, logs of crew activity, and passenger statements were examined with a microscope-like scrutiny. Yet Daniel maintained a calm exterior, a mask that hid the storm still raging within him. Detective Ramirez sat across from him in the small, windowless cabin-turned-interrogation room. Her eyes were sharp, scanning for cracks, for hesitation. "Mr. Taylor," she began, voice steady, "your wife's disappearance coincided with a night where surveillance shows you and her alone on the observation deck. Can you explain exactly what happened?" Daniel's hands tightened on the edge of the table. I don't know. She was there. I didn't see her leave. She fell." Ramirez leaned forward. "Fell how?" I just..." Daniel paused, swallowed. "I stepped away for a moment. She must have lost her balance." The detective noted every word, every micro-expression. But evidence was beginning to paint a different picture. The cameras, though partially obscured by the storm, caught faint glimpses of the confrontation. Crew members recalled hearing a splash during that night, and her personal belongings were found untouched in the cabin. Meanwhile, Marissa's phone and photographs of Ethan surfaced. The investigators pieced together her secret affair, the duffel bag, the midnight meetings, the messages on her phone. It became clear that she had been hiding something significant, a truth that Daniel had suspected but hadn't fully known. Forensic analysis revealed another layer. Footprints on the deck, inconsistent with the idea of an accidental fall. The angle of the railing and the force required to end up in the water suggested intent, something Daniel hadn't accounted for. During one interrogation, Ramirez placed a photograph on the table, a still frame from the surveillance footage, capturing Daniel's reflection in the glass as Marissa's body disappeared from view. His face, pale and expressionless, contrasted sharply with the chaos of the storm outside. "Do you recognize this moment?" she asked quietly. Daniel's throat tightened. I don't know. The storm, the wind. It's all a blur." Outside, the media had begun piecing together the story. Headlines speculated about an affair, betrayal, and the tragic end of a marriage aboard the cruise. Passengers gave interviews describing the couple's tense demeanor and the stormy night, each adding fragments of truth to a narrative that was growing more damning by the day. The more Daniel tried to control the story, the more the evidence seemed to slip through his fingers. Interviews with crew revealed the secret note and the midnight meeting he had followed. Every confession Marissa had made, every photograph of Ethan, became a chain tightening around him. By the third day of investigation, Daniel realized something. The truth could not be contained. The affair, the confrontation, the night of the fall. All of it was surfacing in fragments that didn't need his explanation. The law, the witnesses, the cold logic of surveillance, and the silent testimony of the ocean itself were converging into a single undeniable conclusion. He sat alone in the interrogation room late at night, staring at the blinking fluorescent light. He understood now that hiding the truth, no matter how carefully, was impossible. Every lie, every omission was crumbling. And soon, the final chapter, the reckoning for what had happened on that storm-tossed deck, would come for him. The sea was quiet now, deceptively calm. The storm had passed, leaving the horizon a muted gray, the waves gently rocking the majestic star as if nothing had happened. But silence carries its own weight. On deck, the emptiness pressed against Daniel like the ocean itself was holding its breath. He walked alone, the cold wind cutting through his soaked jacket. Every step echoed against the metal floor, every heartbeat a reminder of the truth that had surfaced. The investigation, the surveillance, the witnesses, and the photographs. The world knew now or soon would. There was no hiding, no rewriting the past. Marissa's absence was a hollow ache. Her laughter, her words, her confession, all reduced to memories swallowed by the waves. Daniel traced his fingers along the railing where she had fallen, feeling the chill of metal, the echo of the final moment. The ocean below seemed endless, dark, waiting. Detectives had been thorough. Crew testimonies, logbooks, security footage, even the duffel bag with photographs and messages, all pieced together a clear narrative. Daniel had tried to craft an alibi, a story of accident and coincidence, but the evidence ignored excuses. Every lie he had told had unraveled in the harsh light of truth. Inside the captain's lounge, a quiet hum replaced the storm's roar. Daniel sat alone at a small table, staring at his untouched drink. Newspapers had arrived, headlines screaming betrayal, murder, and the tragedy of love gone wrong. Passengers whispered in corners, and crew avoided him, their polite nods hiding judgment sharp enough to cut. He could feel it, the eyes of everyone aboard, the judgment, the suspicion. Even the waves outside seemed to carry whispers, reminders of what had been done. The silence of the sea was almost mocking. Daniel's mind replayed the moments of that night. The note, the chase below deck, the confrontation on the railing, the push. He had acted in fury, in betrayal, in some twisted sense of justice. And now the world had seen it all, pieced together in fragments, undeniable and damning. He lifted his gaze to the horizon. The gray light of dawn was breaking, revealing the vast emptiness of the ocean. There was nowhere to run, no tides that could wash away guilt or grief. A distant horn echoed, the ship moving steadily toward port. The investigation would follow him there, authorities waiting, questions ready, consequences inevitable. Daniel understood fully that the silence of the sea was not peace. It was waiting, patient, unforgiving. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a shiver. Not from cold, not from fear, but from the weight of inevitability. Everything had led to this. The storm, the affair, the confrontation, the push, and now the law catching up. The quiet was a reminder that actions leave marks, and no ocean, however vast, can hide them forever. Daniel stood, staring at the water. The waves lapped against the hull, gentle, constant, indifferent. The silence at sea was absolute, but it spoke volumes. And in that stillness, he realized that justice, however slow or cruel, would find him. Just as the sea had taken her, it would take the truth.